Good day everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're all doing good wherever you are in the part of the world. Well, I'm just planning to make a topic regarding wines today, just because it's quite interesting. And I'm just thinking that maybe I'm going to use English as the language that I'm going to use, just because we have some friends mostly in India and Indonesia who might be interested about learning or get a little knowledge regarding wines, which I think it's a great topic. Well, I had a note here. I spent 3 or 4 days checking out everything about basic winemaking and about basically literally everything about wines, because we have quite a lot of questions coming from our dear guests and colleagues about wine. So I decided to make at least a simple note. Maybe this will help. So pardon me with my accent maybe, or my diction or pronunciation of the words. So as you know, this is not my mother tongue, so please bear with me. And okay, let's start. So the common questions that we always get is, what is wine? Well, wine is a fermented grape juice there with a yeast, and it create a wine. Basically, the first known written or wines that they were ever discovered was made in Georgia. It's not Georgia in the States or in the US, but it's Georgia in part of Europe, where they discovered some urns about winemaking, and also they did find it in Iran, in Italy, or even in China. It's about 7000 BC when they found out that China is always one of the winemakers as well. So I don't really know if you can consider as the old world. And yes, as I mentioned, difference or types of wines which we have. It's the difference between the old world and the new world wines. It's just a traditional making, but they said that the old world wines are the ones in the Mediterranean area, and be more specific, it's basically in Italy, in France, or in Spain. As I mentioned, Sicily is the one as well that they recognize as the first wine producing area, and that's the old world. And for the new world wines, we have the states in the US, and we have the Argentina, Chile, Brazil as part of the new world wines, and also Australia, New Zealand, where else? South Africa. So those are the new world wines considered. Okay, so I was just reading here on my notes, and we're going to do on the type of grapes. What kind of grapes are we using? And maybe let's go about the character. But first, I found out that there's about 10,000 different kinds of grapes, including this one, excluding the table grapes and the vinification grapes, which is the winemaking grapes, which is the different is the texture of the skin, the flesh itself, and the seed. So they have a table grapes and a wine grapes, but some of the table grapes they're using as well to make wines, just like the muscatel, which is more on the soft sweetness, a sweet side of wines. And maybe we go down to the different type of grape makers are using, and those are the Cabernet, we have Merlot, we have Syrah, Pinot Noir, and also we have the Zinfandel. And we must know the difference or the character of those grapes. So at least by ordering wines as well, you already know which will be giving you some information as well already, that what kind of drinks or what kind of wine are you going to partake. So basically a Cabernet Sauvignon, it's more like on high tannin and high in alcohol. That's the typical characteristic of a Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's more on alcohol, and also a full-bodied wine. And we have this almost the same wine, which is they call the Merlot, which is there's nothing really much different regarding the Cabernet Sauvignon. A Merlot is a typical high in alcohol but less in tannins, I mean the bitterness to it. And it has this a silky aftertaste, or let's say a long finish. They call it long finish that because when you're going to sip a certain amount of wine, that when you're going to drink it, this leaves a little bit of tartness or bitterness in your throat, and that's linger more, so they call it a long finish. And also we have a Shiraz, which is a full-bodied wine as well, not like the Merlot that it's a medium-bodied, and the Cabernet is same as the Shiraz. It's a full-bodied wine, but the characteristic of Shiraz is going to be on more full-bodied and a little bit of spiciness, and it's a little bit of a woody taste, or what they call a leather that you can always you can linger it, you can taste it in your tongue, and also more on the berry side, so it has a little bit of sweetness. And the best Shiraz nowadays, I think it's, oh, not I think, I know that it's going to be in Australia. Yes, they develop a very good, nice Shiraz in Australia. And going on, we have also the Pinot Noir, which is more on the light to medium bodied. When I say medium bodied, it's just because of the density of the wine itself. When you look at the wines to see how full bodied it is, just look at the color and maybe the silkiness, or maybe some oils in it, so that you can find it if it's that really a full bodied, a medium bodied, or a light bodied wines. And Pinot Noir is the lighter amongst red wine, but we have this one which they call the Zinfandel. Zinfandel is a very confusing type of wine because it's really a you can say it's a red wine grapes, but not really that red. It's more like on a pinkish note. So basically for the Zinfandel, they're using it more on a rosé. We're going to talk about rosé wine in a bit, but let's go on with the types of grapes that we are using for making wines. It's not that all that I was mentioning. It's quite a lot of different grapes, different areas has different names on their grapes that they're using for winemaking. But I'm just mentioning some of the traditional or the well-known grapes that they're using for winemaking. And we go down for the white wines. The white wines, it would be the a Sauvignon Blanc. It's just more acidity to it. It's on the citrus plummy side of grape bouquet, or bouquet on it, or even taste. And we have a Chardonnay, which a little milder than the Sauvignon Blanc. And we have the Semillon, and also the Pinot Grigio. So basically, for me, the steps of this wine, or what you call the level of it, it's more on the acidity. Is we have the Sauvignon Blanc, followed by the Chardonnay, and then we have, it's either between the Semillon or the Pinot Grigio. It has almost the same level, these two kinds of grapes. And also the sweet ones is the Muscat, or the Muscatel, which they're always using it for a sweet wine, or what we call a dessert wine. So what's the reason for this? Basically, for us, especially in the non-producing wines, or I could say a developing country, just like the Philippines and maybe Indonesia or even India. But India, I think they're starting to make some wines already. So wines for us, it's basically become like a status symbol. So you might say that you are empowered once you are drinking wines with a group of people. So basically, you can feel it. It's more like I belong to this part of society. That's became more like a mentality for us, especially Filipinos, that if you drink wine, you are belong to a certain level of the society. I don't know if it's really true that, but I was thinking of that because sometimes we're used of drinking a gin or a beer, but there's a few people who drink wine. It's just because for its symbolizing your status. Just like in China. In China, basically, they went to always because now China is improving with their economy, and they feel empowered every time that they drink wine. So that's the reason. It's not more like the wine producing country that they're drinking wines. It's just because of tradition for them. Just to mind you, in France, basically, if you're going to order wines, you can just say vin rouge or vin blanc, which is a red wine or a white wine. But here in the Philippines, for you to be a little bit more knowledgeable with the wines, that's what the reason why I'm telling you what kind of what's the characteristic of the wines. So basically, if you're going to be here in the Philippines or in the developing countries, when you ordered a wine, you can always say, "Can I have a glass of Merlot, or can I have a glass of Sauvignon Blanc?" And that way alone, that maybe the guy or your friends beside you will say, "Oh, there's one who knows about wine." So it's became more like a empowerment for you. So it's better for you to learn about wines and the great variety. So that's why I'm telling and giving you the characteristic of the wine for you to be well known. So basically, a, um, order of a wine is basically, you know exactly if you want to have this balanced sweetness, or the tartness, or the woody aftertaste of a Chardonnay, or if you want to have more like the more on acid type of things, which is the Sauvignon Blanc, or a lighter white wine, which they call Pinot Noir, or Pinot Grigio, or Semillon. So that alone gives you the empowerment that you don't need to say, "I need a glass of a red wine or a white wine." It's going to be more specific if you're going to say that, "I want to have a glass of a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc." Same as the red wines. So basically, if you want to have more on the alcohol side, you can always ask for a Cabernet. The waiter should know already. You don't need to mention to them that you want to have a white Chardonnay or a white Sauvignon Blanc, because it's really when you say a Sauvignon Blanc, they literally give you a white wine, and if you say a Cabernet Sauvignon, it's going to be a red wine.